Welcome to Performance Driven Living, the podcast where we question everything. We don't tiptoe around tough topics, we walk right into them. Not to provoke, but to get closer to what's real. You might not agree with everything you hear, and that's okay. The show isn't about being right, it's about being real. These conversations are meant to stretch your thinking, challenge assumptions, and spark something deeper. The views shared are those of our guests and may not reflect those of the host or team. And while we dive deep into health, performance, and transformation, this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor before making changes to your health or lifestyle. Take what lands, leave what doesn't. But whatever you do, don't stop questioning.
We are here at the Changing Life and Destiny Conference with the Performance Driven Living Podcast, and I have the honor of chatting with one of my favorite humans here, Dr. Christopher Motley.
Oh,
and
man.
like, you don't know a nicer man than you, like, I assure you. And he says to me earlier, like, you just have a way of approaching people. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm abrasive. Like, you're the nicest human being alive. Like, but
Oh, you're too kind.
so Chris, like, we have no topic to talk about today, but I'm going to tell you something. Like, performance-driven living, the intention of this podcast is our listeners are people who just, they want to show up tomorrow at a different level than they did yesterday. And it's that 1% better mentality. It's like, if there's anything in life that I can do better than I do, how can I learn that? So I say that this is not just an experience of learning, but of unlearning sometimes.
Yes.
Like, what is it? Some things that I believe that maybe I shouldn't, or maybe no one's ever proven false, and I need to reevaluate the things I believe. And I just had a recent incident that's interesting enough. Is like, you can see I got a pretty nasty
Ask you
gash.
about that. Like, literally, what?
I'd love to tell you a really masculine story about how it happened, but I was chopping rosemary on the kitchen counter for Easter. I know, right? Super butch.
Yeah.
And chopped my finger off. My sister said something, and I chopped and got a little too aggressive with the finger. But it's like, and I mean, in a week's time, like, it's
already
already
grown.
that much healed. It's absurd, right? Like, it's so much healing in just a week.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I was thinking was, when I flew here to Texas, I was like, I'm going to have to stop, get some bandage. I'm going to have to stop and get some hydrogen peroxide, so on and so forth. And I start reading online, and like, this article I was reading by this doctor was like, one of the worst things you can do is to put hydrogen peroxide at an open wound. I was like, what? Like, my entire life, I believed that the first thing you did was put hydrogen peroxide on a cut.
Yeah,
Like, that's what we were told, right? And this whole article goes into how hydrogen peroxide doesn't know the difference between infection and new tissue grows. And I was like, what? And so I read, and I'm like, this makes so much sense. And it talks about how hydrogen peroxide will actually extend the healing process. It can lead to scar tissue and all this other kind of stuff. I'm like, well, and they're like literally the best. And it's funny because my dad insisted I go to the hospital, and they were like, okay, we'll pour some water, some lidocaine, and let's just put a bandage on it. I'm like, I told you. But there's nothing to stitch. There was nothing to glue, nothing like that. But he was concerned because it bled a lot. And it's funny because it was like they literally poured like bacteriostatic water over it and put some lidocaine on to kind of numb it a little bit for me, and then put a bandage on it. And they were like, leave the bandage on for 24 hours. Don't let it get wet. Let it scab up, and then just let it run free. And I'm like, okay, now it hurts like hell if I bump into something.
Yeah.
But it was the unlearning process that got me. Like, of the whole thing, I was like, I have for almost 50 years now believed that you are supposed to put hydrogen peroxide on a wound, and now I get taught something different. And I'll be honest, like, I'm so introspective about stuff, and I'm like, I hate to sound too existential, but I'm like,
No, I love it. I love it.
what else do I need to Now I'm like, since a hydrogen peroxide incident, now I'm questioning everything in my life. I'm like, what else did I believe was true and it isn't, and I need to learn more about? But that's the goal of this podcast, is like, what is it that we need to know, or what is it we need to unknow, and what is that? And I want to, I'm hitting the ball into your court.
I love this. I like when you say like the concept and the truth about unlearning. And I think one thing I wanted us to chat about was, when we're talking about performance driving, I'm really conscious, or are people out there very aware about the individuals and the environment around them. And I do a lot of Chinese medicine and acupuncture and measuring a lot about people's frequencies and electrical and signals in their body. But one of the things I'm really aware of is, like when we say unlearn, is how much I have learned to always try to adapt to people, and at the expense of my own growth. I'll keep people around me that I know will literally pull my energy systems, literally drain. And people call them energy vampires, I know. But I've had to unlearn and try to tell myself, like, literally, this is the better for the whole universe.
Okay. Cutting you out's a good idea.
It is a great idea. And I had to unlearn the guilt aspect of putting myself down, saying, like, you're not being a nice person. I appreciate your kind words too. But I think that when I've learned with kindness is that I want to always be kind and be loving and gracious. But I also know that I will not be unkind to anybody. But in the environment, who I choose to just always hang around with is very important for how much I expand.
Same.
And I think that with this, that's exactly what I want people to know about any type of growth patterns. Now, without getting too technical and trying to get too nerd talk, but I will say this.
I'm good for
it's
that.
good. Like, we have a camaraderie, and when you can read people, or I can read people pretty well from the work we do. One thing I've really tried to fashion in life now is if somebody is in my environment, I really focus in on a few things. In the Chinese medicine world, they tell us if you have a person around you, you better make sure that it actually feeds, they call them your element types, but feeds the personality, your own particular personality. And if you look at me, I am like a tree. I look like a tree root. I am thin and I am gangly and I have arms that look like tree roots. And they would say you have a lot of natural wood element, which means you help things grow. Like, you give me a job, Mark, you can see the big picture. You have the king aspect. You definitely, the jawline, the way you look, you can direct, you can see the idea.
More often.
So you really, like, exactly, like, and you have like the nose when it gets a little nice point, it means that you're direct. It means you have a lot of fire, you have a lot of passion, eyes are really oval, you can see the big picture. So you would be the kind of person that would say, okay, you'd feed ideas, create a system. And the system is where a wood element would take it and just say, go work with it. So I say that I'm always aware of people that, I don't like to use the word feed me, like, oh, I'm taking their energy. I'm like, no, who feeds into your life? Who do I feed into? And I think it's important that
Preach that.
Truly, like, if you're gonna find individuals, I love when people like feed into my life, or I can feed into theirs. And I'm just saying, over the years, I've had to learn that choosing people that are around me is not unkind. It is beneficial, and I want us to know that having you as a friend, knowing that you have a particular role in my life, I may have a particular role in your life, but knowing that is so big for our performance.
100%.
And I hope that wasn't too much, but that's why.
No, my God. Here's the deal. When we get into this space, and I'm gonna move into a similar direction here.
Yeah.
And I've brought this up so many times today, and that's how you know this is what's going on in my brain, because it keeps rehearsing itself. But I was just talking on the telephone last night to a friend of mine. Just, the guy is a rock star human. I could never even pretend to be in his league.
Oh.
And the fact that he calls me friend is flattery to me.
Oh.
And I'm chatting with him yesterday, and he was like, look, I just had to make some tough decisions in my life. He goes, I realized that I just had some people around me that drained me.
Yes.
And I said, dude, like, here's the deal. Like, he's a CEO of a huge 9-digit company. And I'm like, you need to be around people. You need a C-suite, man, that are people you'd hang out with after work.
Yes.
Mike, because you can't build that group around a group of people. And I told him, I said, I've got a new COO at my company. And as a COO, as I'm a CEO, and as a COO, I was so impressed because one of the things he told me very early in his employment with us, he's only been with me a few months now, and he's like, we need to find ways to connect outside of work. And I was like, I love that you see that, because I'm disc assessment. I'm an I. Like I'm a relational guy. Like I want to get to know you. I want to know what makes you tick. I want to know how I can feed into you. I'm an acts of service, words of affirmation, like whatever kind of quiz you want to put it together. But I'm like, we need to be around people that feed us that way.
Yes.
We need to be around those people, because here's the deal. Like, we have this tendency to continue to give out, and we don't nurture ourselves. So, I'll feedback, like my new book, Radical Generosity.
Yes.
You got a copy.
Yes.
Okay. Absolutely. I love so much of the content in there, and it sounds really self-promoting. I don't mean to make it that way, but obviously it's part of who I am, right? And even in there, I talk about, like, one of the elements of generosity is being generous to ourselves.
Wow.
And like, we need to think about the way, like, it's that whole metaphor of the, put your own oxygen mask on before you help the person next to you.
Yes.
Like, I can't be the person that everybody needs me to be if I'm not in that place.
That's right.
And stopping and retreating or even terminating some relationships is how I stay fresh enough to give in the ways that I'm able to. And I can't show up in all these other ways if I don't do that. And sometimes you're right. We deal with, I got the Christian guilt of, give to everybody, constant go, 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 volunteer everywhere. And I'm like, no, hard stop.
Hard stop.
Hard stop on that.
Now,
because
when you have that guilt and you recognize that guilt's upon us, I think what was one thing that was easier for me was when I started to dive deeper into like biofield therapy, and that's where I was going through, because I would feel guilt as well. Like, raised up in a Christian home, nothing against Christian homes, I just had this guilt, like,
sure,
you always put other people before yourself. And when you were talking about generous to yourself, I'm in complete agreement. I realized that there's certain actions in my life that were really life-giving to me, is that my personality type is that I like to take an idea or take some kind of passion and make it grow. That's just who I am.
Yeah.
But when I'm generous to myself, I realize that I would have to create an environment or people around me that would actually do that with me and for me, because that was the only way I was going to be generous to myself, is to put those kind of individuals around myself. In fact, I know you've seen this too, Robbie. Like, when you're around people, like, you'll have, older friends and such, they will say, like, well, why won't you keep coming out with us? And I'm not like telling somebody I don't want to hang out with you. I just realized that I started making time in my schedule for sets of people that were literally congruent about how they wanted to achieve certain things, how they wanted to nurture their life.
Yes.
And did you ever find this? I'm asking, like, sometimes I would say there is nothing wrong hanging on this individual. I just feel very stagnant. And I just don't think that if you're generous to yourself, you don't want to feel stagnant. That's all. And really, when you talk about like Chinese medicine theory, I don't base everything on that, but I would say if something in my body doesn't make me grow, literally, physically, you'll make yourself sick. That's the truth.
I was reading something the other day, and I don't even remember who posted it, so I'm not going to give credit where it's not deserved, but it was this idea that food itself is either information or inflammation, right? That food is either feeding you something or it's hurting you, but there is no in between. There are no neutrals. And I was like, man, like, relationships are the same way. Like, the people in your life are feeding you or they're hurting you. There is no neutral.
That's
like,
right.
We don't get to coast in any area of life. It is forward or backward, one of those two choices. And so I'm going to take this one step further, because you don't want to nerd out. I'm going to nerd out worse, because you talk about biofield.
Yeah.
And I actually was talking earlier today. We're obviously at the Changing Life and Destiny conference, where we've both been talking to people on podcasts all day long.
Yep.
And in talking with Philip von Holzendorf-Failing, see, A+, Philip, if you're listening to this, that was an A+. In talking with Philip earlier, we got into this whole conversation about biofield and this idea of this vibrational field about yourself. And I'm going to go back into I'll say Christian roots, right? I mean, I'm a Christian man. I'm very proud of that, and I am 100% on board. And during a time, and I mentioned this to him earlier, there was a book that came out many years ago called The Shack.
Yeah,
and
I remember
it was
The Shack.
this whole idea of vision boarding and manifesting and so on and so forth. And I'm like, and in that circle, in that Christian community, it was like, that is the devil. That is you trying to wishful think your way into life and so on and so forth. And I was like, okay, yeah, I was all team Shaq was bad, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think in any way. And as a matter of fact, the more I dive into this idea of biofield and vibration and get into the woo space, if you will, the more Christianity to me makes sense. Because I'm like,
great.
like this whole idea, like I was talking, the other day, Olivia Lassler.
Yeah.
Olivia
You introduced me. She's great.
She's incredible.
Yeah.
And Olivia, we were talking and something came about this whole concept of, psychoneural immunology. And we started talking about trauma response at a cellular level. And I was like, man, but this makes me start thinking about like, sure, I eat a very protein-based diet typically. Like I'm all into the animals. I'm like, but here's the deal. Like if an animal died in a traumatic way, is there trauma stored at a cellular level that's actually now I'm ingesting trauma?
Wow.
Like cellularly, and she completely agrees. And I'm like, it immediately tossed me back to like Jewish kosher laws. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like the whole idea of humane killing of animals has always been part, and it's not just Jewish. I mean, that's the same with halal. That's the same in many ancient Eastern cultures. Like, and I'm like, I think the further we get in our understanding, the more we realize that the past, like we got too smart for ourselves, I think, for a while. We didn't understand it, and then we got back to the beginning in some ways. I feel like we just passed go and collected our $200 because literally I think we're in this place right now. And so Philip and I started talking, and I'll connect it to another story, but this idea of the people we surround ourselves, the words that we speak over ourselves, the words that other people in our lives speak over us, that we have literal physiological responses to these things. Yes. And this is just this weird journey I'm on right now. But this idea that I refuse to let negativity into my life. Like, you're bringing negativity in, just check baggage, move on. Like, right. I don't want it. And I'm bold enough that when people started, I will literally interrupt the conversation and say, I'm really sorry, but this conversation turned a little too negative for me.
Yeah.
Like, so either topic change or conversation ends. Like, this is the way we do things now. And it's like, sometimes I get people who are just like, okay, that was abrupt. I'm like, my life. My life.
That's right.
If I'm at your house, you can talk about whatever you want. But if you're in mine, my rules. I don't want to be part of it. And it's not because I'm being an ass about it. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But there literally is something at that level that you can't argue it. Like being around or listening to that kind of stuff, it just, you respond. You know what I mean?
That's true. I whenever you have a negative talk that doesn't make you particular, like your personality type grow, I am so conscious about when people will say something, again, that doesn't create growth in my aspect of my life. And I think that one of the coolest things I read about was there is a book where this Chinese scientist would try to disprove biofields and acupuncture. And
he just kept proving it right.
And one of the things that I thought was really cool was that whenever we speak like positivity, he would state that if we have a particular, I say belief or thought or words that we say, that as it exits, he says, it's just like the tuning fork, which I thought was really interesting. If somebody else said something that was similar to you, that if you guys wavelengths matched each other, the wavelengths literally, links would match of the wave and the height. And so what happens is, like they say in the physics world, it will amplify the signal. You actually make the signal stronger. So it'd be like if you and I were at the opposite ends of the room and we were doing the rope pulls, and you said, no, we're going to go higher and stronger. And the waves kept getting higher. And they said, we create standing waves. So the guy was saying that, so he said, you better be very conscious about what you say around other people or what they say around you, because you'll create standing waves between you and the other person. So if you have negative, it will actually flip the signal, and it can actually they call it music called out of phase. It'll actually squash your frequencies. And he says, you have to make sure that they're in line with what you think. Now, I'm not saying I got to go out and you can only hang out with me if you believe what I believe. I'm not saying that.
No.
But I would say how I view my growth and how I view where my vision. When you said about attraction, I used to think the same way. I thought it was, I don't know if this is really in line with God, but I thought, why can't I think of a vision about how I want my next 5 years to be? Is that how you feel?
No, it's like I tell people, like, you can't get to a destination on accident, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Like, when you're trying to get to a location, I mean, I GPS, and what do? I start from the end, and then I reverse engineer how to get there. That's the way a GPS works. Like, I can't tell the GPS here, I'm going north on I-75.
Yes.
You know, let's hope I end up where everybody else is for dinner tonight, right? Like, no, I need to plug in the address and then go. And it's like, isn't that the same type of thing? Like, I got to pick the destination.
That's good.
And then I pick all my behaviors that lead to the destination. Every turn in the road is guided because I know where the destination is. It's like, isn't that like a GPS vision board?
Okay, now I'm also
rocked
my world.
I've never said those words before that literally came to me right now. So you're vibrating.
Dude, that just really rocked my world, actually.
Or GPS, right? Plug in the destination and turn by turn directions on how to get there. Like that works for me.
That is, to me, when you have that analogy, I'm going to think about this all night. I'm not kidding. Like the turning points, like, and where you're going to like curve through life. I love to like relate technology with like our physiology and such, and like talking about pathways. So if you create the vision, then you'd have to create all those small actions to actually steer you in that direction. That basically will create, like they say, not even just beliefs, but your feelings. And I think that's really important because, like you said, a positive word or thought is going to make you feel positive. And like just they say, laws of attraction, what you feel, your feelings, you'll attract what you feel.
And let me say this too, because I'm going to go back to our GPS metaphor.
I love that. I'm telling you, I'm remember that rest of my life.
Here's the deal, okay? You live in Nashville.
Yep.
Like, in the South. Like, it's sometimes you drive a long distance to get where you're trying to get, right? Like, I live in Florida. 6 miles is an hour drive. but the reality is like, when I plug in the directions, I think something happens physiologically, though, because I plug in the directions on the GPS, and I have faith that GPS is going to tell me when to turn left. It's going to speak out loud. It's going to give me visual and auditory clues. And because of that, I'm going to say I'm able to stay in a parasympathetic state because I don't worry about that journey at this point because the journey's mapped.
Wow.
You know, if I'm trying to find something on my own, like I'm in this fight or flight sympathetic nervous system, right? Like I'm up here because I'm trying to find where I'm going and I don't know what's going on. And it's like I'm wandering around and then I get into some sketch areas and all this else. And it's like, I don't see the contradiction behind saying that vision boarding and this kind of stuff. No, to me, that's just roadmap. And maybe I'll change the destination. Like I can hit end trip and then pick another destination somewhere halfway there. But it's given me some goalposts, some guidelines to navigate my way there. And to me, that makes complete sense. And I feel in so many ways that is faith.
When you said you had faith that it's going to take you from this point to that point.
My job's just turned.
No, man, it's my drop. That's like a whole other section, like another talk, another something you do. Like, I'm not kidding. That's amazing. Because when you have faith, like if you're going to make all the, like you just turn, and you're going to that final destination, you could hit that. I love it. You could hit en route if you want to end the route.
And I'm going to tell you, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I love audiobooks, but I also love music.
Yep.
And
wow, this is great.
I don't turn the radio up when I'm lost.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I turn the radio up when I'm enjoying my drive, and either I'm jamming out to some weird channel, or I'm listening to a book and learning something. But they say, like, success is not about the destination, it's about the journey.
Yes.
And it's like, I don't enjoy the journey if I don't have directions on where I'm going.
Wow.
And it's like, I don't get to enjoy the journey. I don't get to crank up the tunes and sing along because I'll tell you what, I'm a one-man concert when the car's going. But it's like, I don't get to enjoy that journey if I'm not paying attention to the directions, right? If someone said me, turn right here, turn left here, 10 more miles, 300 more miles, whatever that is, and I love a good road trip. But I don't get to pay attention to that kind of stuff if I'm too busy figuring, like if I don't know where I'm going.
Wow. So
I'm a big fan of that. Like, and I hate to say it, but like that speaking it into existence kind of stuff doesn't mean that I believe that I have the power to make things happen. But dude, I'm going to tell you, the more that I speak into what I want in my life, the more it happens. And sometimes that's just because I'm looking for it.
Yes.
That we see what we look for.
Yes.
If all I want to, if I buy a red car, suddenly all the cars on the road look red.
Yes.
Like, And if I look for goodness, I see the goodness all around me. If I look for bad, I see the bad all around me. Like if I look for scarcity, I find scarcity. And if I look for abundance, I find abundance. And neither one of those visions cost me any extra. Like I can do both for free. Why in the world would I choose a scarcity mindset?
You just answered that. Like, why in the world wouldn't I do it for free? And I'm just reiterate, that is amazing, because I'm going to remember this analogy. I'm not kidding. I'm thinking about this the whole time. I'm not kidding. Wow. I'm with you. When you say speak, I would always, I think people out there probably, if they did live in some form of guilt, they would say, well, I'm going to speak this kind of like vision of where I want to be in a few years, or this is the house I want to have, or this. And I would say, I'll say little affirmations. And one of the things that I've learned is I always try to, for me, I think, I'll say realistic, not like saying I'm dampening my vision, but I'm like, what's a realistic goal you really want to say and speak in the world?
Milestones.
Yeah, this is where I want to go. And one thing that really reinforced that was that I was reading books. I know you know these two because you're that kind of guy. Like I was reading about organ therapies. And one of the biggest things they talked about was some people at heart talk and organ talk. And I've been a real big proponent of organ talk. And as weird as that would sound, is that you would speak to the organs, because they say organs have their own nervous systems, of course. And they were saying that there was a huge relay that they would find neurologically where your body would actually could tell that there was actually action between your brain and the organ. And so talking with my organs and such, I know that I would say, I talk to my heart. I go, heart, how are you today? I'm like, really? I'm not kidding. Like, what did I do? And this is like putting the voice out. One thing that they would say is that if your actions in your day are contradictory to what you're trying to tell your heart won't trust you. So if I say, I want to live a life like, of ease and stuff, but you go out and you just work yourself to death, your heart's like, you say that you want a life of, abundance, but you're just working yourself to death. So the trust, one thing they say is to create trust in your organs. So really get so in tune with the organ that there's a trustworthiness. Like you can feel when your heart goes, Mark, you're doing it again, so hold up. And I think that reinforcement of if you're communicating with your whole body, I'm telling you, you could speak something out. Your whole body believes it. You know how much I believe it would come to you.
I'm going to tell you, I was at Luke Story's house.
What? You know Luke?
Yeah.
I don't know him, but I mean, he looks cool.
Awesome. He's awesome. And a couple weeks ago, I was down at Luke's house in Austin, and we were having this similar conversation, truthfully. And we just,
go crazy with it.
Another bromance. It just went wild. And I'm talking with Luke, and I know I've shared this story a few times now, and we get talking to those power words, like the things we speak over ourselves and so on and so forth. I'm like, Luke, I'm going to give you an example. And we agreed on it. It wasn't like it was a joust or anything. And he's just like, oh, no, I believe that. I believe words are powerful, so on and so forth. And he's so chill and such a cool guy. And he says, and I was like, well, Luke, let me give you an example. I'm like, if I were to right now scream the word duck, I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm going to walk you through what happens here. I said, I scream duck. Your body shifts to a sympathetic nervous system response.
Yes.
You begin creating nitric oxide throughout your body. Your pupils dilate. Your entire cardiovascular system widens all of its blood vessels. Your sexual and digestive organs and any non-essential for survival organs begin to slow down, if not shut down. Your brain goes into this complete fight or flight situation. Mm-hmm. And I went through like 10 different things or something that physiologically occur when a person is presented with danger. And I went, now let me ask you, Mike, that's one word from me, and I altered your physiology.
Oh.
Mike, tell me what the abundance of words that you say to yourself every day and how your body responds. I said, you continue to tell yourself you're diabetic, your cells believe you. They don't even try to heal anymore.
That's right.
They don't even try, because they're like, oh no, this is who we are now. Mike, you tell yourself you're fat. You're fat.
Yes.
You're going to be. It's going to continue because you've told your cells that they need to react to energy and food and everything else in that way. You tell yourself that you are an alcoholic. Congratulations. You are continuing to respond in that way. Like all of these things that we repeat to ourselves. And that goes into people saying, I'm a failure, I'm unlovable, and we can go into all the other chronic stuff on top of that. But I'm just talking kind of the foo-foo side of things, right? Like, we can just sit and talk about people just believing their value, much less, diagnoses. And I'm like, we speak this over ourselves on a regular basis, and then trauma.
Yes.
We've had parents and loved ones and everything else who have spoken negativity over us for so long. And I'm like, when it got to the point that I'm like, my gosh, like I can't even think of how traumatized my body has been over the last 50 years of the things I've said to it.
Yes.
It's like I'm apologizing to my body. I'm like, I'm so sorry for the way I've treated you. And I don't mean by intakes.
Yeah.
Just by the things I've said to you.
Yes.
Because you have responded to everything I've told you for so long. And I'm mad at the outputs, like not okay. And I'm like, what is it when you started by saying the negativity in your life, like generosity of cutting people out of your life because of it. I'm like, I mean,
it's exactly right. I am, when you talked about like, if you can have that positive self-talk, I was remembering this study that they talked about in this book that they were talking about self-valuation, self-devaluation, and it's in line that like if you have your spleen and your pancreas, but your spleen helps with white blood cell and immune function and clean up your lymph nodes, that if you do keep saying something in the sense that I'm not worthy, or your feelings, this person, another feeling is so much more important than my own, or I need to take care of them before I take care of myself, is exactly what they said happens to your body. They found that in research, when people do that, they put themselves down, their white blood cell counts are altered tremendously.
it's crazy.
Because it pulls all the white blood cells out of their arms and legs and tries to push it back to their spleen, because you're literally telling yourself, don't worry about me, I'm fine, you don't have to fix anything. And all those people that have caretaker syndrome, and you and I, we know we've had people in our lives we take care of. I'm just saying with love, those people get sick because they're saying this person's feelings and health is more important than my own.
Right.
And it turns into things
and your
like
body says, we don't have to deal with us right now because we'll do it after this is taken care of.
Yes.
And it's like the simultaneously both is still an option.
Yes, you hit a nail on the head. And I wonder, with all the self-talk, how foreign it is for us to talk with ourselves. And I'm with you 100%. This is what I'll tell myself. Sometimes when I push myself too hard, my family line has had gallbladder issues. And one of the things that gallbladders, they tell us with emotions and organs, is your gallbladder responds if somebody intrudes on your territory, intrudes on your time, or takes your time, or says something negative, and you feel like it's somebody taking your territory, the gallbladder kicks in and is like very resentful, like don't take my territory away, like this is mine, don't take something away. And I would find that in my family line we had gallbladder issues, and I realized how much resentment I could store. But I didn't realize how much actions I did to reinforce that weakness that was in my family line. The weakness was, I'll let anybody take my territory away. It's okay.
Right.
I'm fine.
We're supposed to be dejected in order to be humble.
Exactly right. And so whenever I started to really realize that when people were taking my time away or doing something, I thought, no, I'm going to start flipping that around, and I'm going to push that away and start. And I would tell my organ, I'd tell my gallbladder, I'd say, I'm sorry, I'm doing it again, and I want you to know I'm just going to work on my boundary and work on boundary. And I'm not joking. My digestion gets better. My stomach feels better. I have a better, between the hour, early morning, we know the Chinese medicine clock would say like early morning's gallbladder, but I would have less indigestion. I would have better sleep. And I'm just thinking, just from what I talk to myself with. Mm-hmm. And it is amazing how we're all interlaid together, man. Like I have, to one point, is I want to create trust, like we were talking about, within my body. When I talk to my organs or have that self-talk, I want to be so comfortable with my self-talk that there's no like disbelief if I say something like, man, I love you.
Well, the way you talk to yourself shouldn't be offensive, because if you spoke to somebody else the way you talk to yourself, they'd punch you. Like, let's be real. they would absolutely just lambaste you if you spoke to someone else that way. And I mean, I'm super cognizant of this. We're all on a journey.
Yep.
And like I said, years past, I wouldn't have even have had this conversation. It would have felt too woo.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe I'm just on that journey and this is where I am. But the power, and you started our conversation with talking about the power of attraction, and it's like, and I do believe like attracts like, and I do believe that people who, you know, we use the word commiserate. It's like, sure, if you're miserable, go commiserate, go be miserable with other miserable people. I don't want to be around it. Like,
that's right.
I have bad days too, but a bad day is not a bad life.
That's right. I love it.
I think there's that, and I mentioned radical generosity in that way, and in that book, I even go to a physiological reaction that we have to generosity. This idea that just giving to somebody else creates an oxytocin release in our brain.
Wow.
And it's like a physiological reaction to just an action. I'm like, man, when I have a bad day, it checks me. Because I'm like, when I'm in that place, I'm like, I will literally, I'm not even joking to you, buddy. Like, you probably will get texts from me if you haven't already, because I don't remember who I talked to. But if I'm having a miserable day, I will just send like some quick little, hey, buddy, I'm just glad you're in my life.
Yeah, you've done that.
Like,
Done that. Yeah.
literally just a random message to a friend and be like, thank you for being you. I am glad you, thank you for calling me friend. You know, like those types of messages, or I just want to remind you I love you. Like, and it'll be to friends, it'll be to family, it'll just be to random people sometimes. And I'm like, why? Because it fixes me.
Wow. I love it.
It takes the focus off of my negativity, which I know is temporal. And I'm like, especially like for people who are lonely or like whatever, like literally the loneliness, studies have shown that loneliness actually takes more years off of a person's life than cigarettes.
What?
Like just loneliness, just a person being detached from other people. And I'm like, when people get into the state, bad day, finances, job, health, whatever it takes, like, figure out a way to give to somebody else. Like, just give to somebody else, whether it's words, whether it's money, whether it's deeds, whether it's whatever. Just be in that place and enjoy that moment with them and just say something to someone else. And I'll tell you what, 9 chances out of 10, the people that you're sending it to send you back a message that is 12 times nicer than the one you sent them, because they were shocked that they got this, right?
Yes.
But it literally is a physiological change. And I think, you know, if I could summarize this entire conversation, it's that level of energy, we'll call it, that negativity or that positivity, that biofield, whatever we want to name it, because everybody uses their different words, their vibration. It's like, it has physiological consequences.
Yes.
And as we're sitting here at a health summit, I was saying earlier to somebody, it's like, you can blow through tens of thousands of dollars walking through this place, right? It's an easy place to spend money. Like, but if we started with the free option, like the free option of speaking to ourselves with kindness, keeping a positivity, like literally just getting our psyche in a place that we're ready to receive good things.
Yes.
And it's like, when does that begin? Like, and if we want to tie it back even to scripture, like, you have not because you ask not.
That's beautiful, brother.
And it's like, this to me is everything I want to be right now. And I am so freaking grateful to sit and talk to you about it.
You too, my man. I'm telling you, brother. I'm
Buddy,
just saying,
you're incredible.
You are too. And I think that whenever you have that, like, I wanted to ask you the generosity, I can tell, like, you've studied it, you know, like with your heart. And I'm not just saying because I'm on your podcast, but I think that you can tell that you realize that these steps that you're like sending out a text, it creates this energy around people, around yourself, around other people, that just creates love. And I'm not being woo-woo. I'm just really generosity. That's why I love the name of the book. It's that it really, because it is create, like, when I am down, when you say generous, like, I will say great. I always tell myself, you be grateful, have some gratitude about something. And to me, when you talk about those small steps, I used to count in the morning. They'd say, tell yourself 3 things you're grateful for. And I would try to do 3 things in the morning and 3 things at night. And then I started practicing every day. I try to go through the day, like generosity. I'm like, be generous to yourself, sit down and have a meal, be grateful for who's around you. And so I literally will try to take these small steps in my life. And that's what I love about your book, about who you are. And I mean, that's why I say instant kinship. I could tell, like, you really tried to, like, put that generous into other people's lives. So I'm just saying thank you, brother.
I appreciate that. I'm gonna have to give you a copy of my other book that I don't actually talk about much, but I had a gratitude problem for a long time. Like, it was very hard for me to feel grateful because my personality is such that I can always find what's wrong.
Yeah.
And I started joking about it, and I ended up writing a book called Lower the Bar. and Lower the Bar, the entire goal of that book was it is 366 days, and every day has one other thing to be grateful for, and they are the dumbest things. Because it is not like, oh, for my family and the love and you know, and my relationship with God. Like, yeah, of course I'm grateful for those. But everybody looks at that. I'm like, I'm grateful for red lights. Because you know what? Those are the moments I check my text messages. Like that type of stuff. And it like literally took some of the most ridiculous things and put them all in this book. I think we've got copies. I'll give you one here.
I'm not kidding.
It's literally the goofiest stuff, and it's all this sarcastic tone and stuff, but it was my way of how can I be grateful in the mundane?
That's beautiful, brother.
That it doesn't need to be grateful for the $1 million that just showed up in my bank account yesterday afternoon, which it did not, but I'm manifesting.
Yeah.
It's grateful for the dumb stuff. Like, how can I just be grateful for the small stuff? Because if you can't be grateful in those moments, you're missing the big ones.
Oh, that's my drop right there. I'm telling you, that's what I'm telling you. Like, whenever I am going to take away from this was all you say the mundane things. I always have these one words, and when you say the mundane things, I don't want to look, even if they're mundane to people, I'm going to find the gratitude or find something I'm appreciative for.
Right, 100%.
So, and I want everyone out there to know that whenever I'm around you, though, and such, we always give each other a big hug. It's because you can tell that you and I both, you always want to create energy around people. 100%. And it's like you just said, if there was enough negativity in the world, and I try to think there's already enough negativity in the world. Why keep adding it on with my words and such? That's why people, and I'm going to try my best to be as positive as I can, though.
I love it. Well, for anybody watching right now, this is Dr. Christopher Motley. Go follow his podcast as well. It's Ancient Health Podcast.
Ancient Health Podcast.
Dude's incredible. You're going to want to know the stuff he's talking about. It's probably better than this.
No, man. This is like mic drop stuff. I'm really going to think about this. Navigation systems, I'm all about that.
He's too kind.
No, well,
Chris, I cannot thank you enough for coming in, man.
Thank you, brother.
Brother, so good having you.
You too, my bro. All right. Thanks, guys.